there! Welcome to the Aspect Podcast Network, the home of Bending the Narrative. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button below and be the first to listen to our new episodes and other shows from the Aspect, covering topics such as Marvel, Star Wars, Game of Thrones, and more. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Bending the Narrative here on the Aspect Network. I'm one of your hosts, Kate Cronquist, and joining me every week to discuss the latest and greatest in the world of Avatar is Alex Batts. Alex, how are you doing?
I am doing great. I'm super excited to dive into this week's episode. I think there's a lot that I love here. So we're continuing our book 2 rewatch with the episode titled The Swamp.
We got a good episode going. So let's continue tracking Team Avatar now and Zuko and Naira's separate journeys with our handy dandy little map here. All right, as we can see, we are
just a little south. just a little. They like barely moved. They got out of the desert area, and we now get some greenery, which is cool. That and some water, because obviously we're visiting a swamp, and we still don't know exactly where Iroh and Zuko are. Like
they're somewhere in the Earth Kingdom.
We'll catch up with them, their exact location next week. But
yes,
for now we just know they're on the map. What you can see on screen now, they're there somewhere.
We're like, guys, they're right there.
Yeah, they're over there.
They're over there. They're right there.
It's fine. Don't worry about it too much.
Fine. Don't worry about it too much.
But yeah, so Team Avatar is picking up their long-held tradition of not making a lot of progress on their journey. Which, I mean, I guess now at this point, it's kind of like, it's like they're traveling to a specific place. He's now just needing to find an earthbending master. Yeah,
wait. So where are they going right now?
I guess just to find more food or shelter or something. Yeah, like I don't know, because they're not going. It's like they're going to one of the poles. They were going to Amashu, but that was just to find Boomy to learn earthbending. So like they're just kind of hanging out. Yeah, they're going camping.
Gang is vibing.
Yeah, so that's fun for them. They're just not making a ton of progress, but still moving around the map, showing us different elements of the world. So we'll dive into the episode. It's, again, Book 2, Episode 4, The Swamp. It's directed by Giancarlo Volpe and written by Tim Hedrick. And if you're just joining us, we will be discussing the show in its totality, so be warned about spoilers. And this week, we're continuing our recapping the episode as quickly as I can manage to do it. So for this one, we see Zuko and Iroh again. It opens with them. And they're like,
this is
on
the first, right?
Yeah, I think
so. One of the few episodes that opens with them.
So we get them in the first scene, and they're on the street begging for money. And Iroh starts performing for money too. He gets bullied by this dude with some swords, who is the worst guy.
And also, the song that Iroh sings, where he's like, "The girls in the city," it's written by Tim Hedrick, who wrote the episode.
That's cool.
I just think that's so funny.
So yeah, he performs. Zuko's very pissed about being poor and one of the common people. He does not like it. He's like, they should be bowing down to us. We are royalty.
Spoiled.
So we get that. And then we don't see them until the end of the episode. So forget about them for a second. We go back to the gang, and they're flying above the swamp, and Aang starts getting like called to the swamp and like nosediving without realizing it. And they're like, "Hey man, what are you doing? We should not visit that place that looks super creepy and has bad vibes." And he's like, "I don't know, guys. It's kind of just like calling to me, like Avatar type stuff." And he gets talked out of it momentarily, but then a tornado comes out of nowhere and forces them down. They end up crashing. Not before Aang develops a air force field bubble, which is super sick. I think
one of the only times we see that.
Yeah, which is so funny. There's another thing that happens way later in the episode that I think is also the only time we see it in the episode.
Oh,
and it's kind of an OP thing. I can't remember it being used again. We'll get there.
Is it that Avatar state thing?
But it's like the connected.
I'm jumping ahead.
Yeah, we'll get there. So they get forced down by the tornado and crash land in the swamp. Anyways, Sokka, Katara, and Aang get separated from Momo and Appa, and so we get the two sets having to like explore and deal with this now harsh environment. It seems super creepy, and like this episode turns into kind of horror vibes, which is cool. We get adventures with Momo and Appa, which I always love. Like they're just such a great
Yes.
buddy like duo, and seeing them like
Mhm.
go through the swamp is really cool. And then we get the gang who like have to camp overnight. Sokka keeps on cutting everything up in the swamp. He's like, whatever, this is fine. And Aang and Katara are like, I don't know, you should maybe like try to respect the environment a little bit more, dude. And he's like, nah, it's fine. So they spend overnight in the swamp. The swamp then like captures them basically, and they have visions where like they see different people. Aang sees a mysterious girl who he's not sure who that might be, and then Sokka sees, I'm blanking on her name. I didn't write it down, and we literally just,
UA.
yes, Yue. Thank you. He sees Yue, and then Katara thinks that she sees her mother, and so that's super interesting stuff. They get to the heart of the swamp, which is the giant tree, which I love. I'm a sucker for that stereotype design and things. Like a giant tree is so cool. Don't ask
It's
me
like
why.
things
It's just
go boom and big plant.
like a big tree, man. I don't know. It's awesome. It
Yeah,
is.
hell yeah.
It's really
Guys will
cool.
see
It's
this and be like, hell yeah.
100% every time, and it's honestly gigantic. Like it is when you get the full like wide shot of the entire tree. It's ridiculous.
It actually is huge.
Um,
I think they're based on real. There's like it's like a hybrid of a banyan grove, or they're banyan groves. They're a
mhm.
hybrid of a banyan tree and mangrove trees, which are
Oh, okay,
notably gigantic. Little
interesting.
fun
Well,
fact.
it's really awesome. They get to the tree,
Well,
and also the whole episode, it's a big through line that Sokka's like, "There's nothing mysterious or supernatural or anything happening here," and they're like, "I don't know, man. It kind of seems like there is." And then they get attacked by a giant swamp monster, and we get a cool fight ensuing between them. Ends up being revealed that the swamp monster is just this dude who's inside the vines and using it as like a mech suit, essentially, like, and just
sick. Wait,
piloting
yeah, it's
everything.
like a mecha suit. I didn't think
Yeah,
about that.
like if
Ooh,
it's just an
sorry,
organic
Mike.
mech suit at that point, which is really cool. The fight again, this is a good example of like the gang being really good with how they fight and like the combat. Like
Yes,
it's a super sick fight. Uh,
team.
so they eventually like defeat him, but then also are like, hey man, we're not bad people, like, and so they become friends. And then this dude drops some knowledge on them and Aang, and is talking about time and death being illusions and everything's connected, and like the entire
Existential
swamp
crisis.
is the one I want to. We'll get into this stuff because this is like why I really love
This
this
is a huge,
episode.
yeah.
um, drops all of this stuff, says that the entire swamp is the one tree, like it's all connected, like the entire world is. And then so like yeah, we get all of that, and then the gang needs to rescue Appa and Momo because they've been captured by the swamp people. And Aang finds them using the like just touching the tree and like being like, oh, it's all connected, and you can track them. So they go and they end up rescuing them, which then just leads them to also with the swamp people being like, hey, we're not enemies actually, and like they all just chill and have a good time, which is pretty cool. And so like that's where their stuff ends. And then the final scene is Zuko getting payback on the dude from the opening scene as the blue spirit. He like shows up and maybe kills that guy, question mark.
Yeah, wait.
Like it
Hold on
doesn't,
a
it just
second.
hard cuts and we
Hold
never
on a
see anything about that
second.
again, so like you infer whatever you want from there. I like um but yeah, that's the
Hmm.
episode. That's like
Wait, I
the
didn't think
plot line.
about that.
Yeah, it's just like hard cuts. We don't know.
Wait.
Like he just draws both of his swords, and you're like, all right, man. I mean, like,
Guess the
sure.
body kills that guy.
Maybe he just like robs him and like beats him up a little bit. Maybe he kills him. You decide. Um,
You decide.
so yeah, that's the episode. What are your overall thoughts on this episode? Like, what do you think about the whole thing?
Well, it's definitely an interesting episode. See, what happened with this episode is when I was a kid, this one was
Mhm,
always playing on TV for some reason. So I feel like I've seen it a million times and I used to not like it. But now
mhm.
watching it again with, podcast in mind and actually thinking in depth about it, it's like, oh, there's some good little tidbits in here. It's actually a pretty cute episode. I think
Yeah.
I've seen it so many times that I'm like, ugh, the swamp episode again. No hate, no
Mhm.
hate. It's so good. We love it. But
Yeah.
I'm
I
tired
mean,
of
even the
seeing it.
worst episode of this show is a great episode of
Yeah.
television.
See,
Just
that's, you
like
know what? That's it. It's still not a bad episode. It's so good. Um, Not a lot happens in it, but yet again, it's that thing where
I
it
feel
does without you knowing. You know what I mean?
similarly about this episode where like watching the first half, I'm not as in it. Like it's good
Mm.
and it's entertaining, and like I do like the sort of just turning into a bit of a horror like episode, like a kids
Oh,
horror episode
yes.
for a little bit. Like
Yeah.
that's super cool. I like that
That
vibe.
is very cool.
all as usual, and this happens with every episode, like the comedic bits are always so good. Like there's just so many consistent like visual gags, and then also just the writing is really smart as always. And so like it keeps it entertaining, but it's not like, oh, this is my favorite episode ever. But then again, like you get to the last like act, the last like 5 to 8 minutes or whatever, and I'm like, oh, I love this episode because like
Yes.
when we
Hmm.
get to the protector and like he starts saying all of this, and it's able to work because of the things that it's doing early in the episode and like building it up, like Sokka consistently like cutting the swamp and like the supernatural and kind of creepy vibes and like all that kind of stuff. And then like you get to the back end and you get the answers for that. You get the payoff for all of that.
Yes.
And that's
That
what
is
makes
like
it
the
really,
good
really
thing. You
like,
do get the payoff. It's worth it.
yeah, like, and honestly, thinking about it on like on a larger scale, the show just does that all of the time, like that. Because whenever I'm rewatching it, like I'll be watching the first like 10 minutes, and I'm like, oh, this is good, but like, meh. And then like I get to the back half, I'm like, oh, this episode was so
I'm like,
good,
oh,
and
that's
it's just because like
right.
they're really good at telling stories, like and doing it in the contained like time limit that they have, and making it
Hmm.
really like the payoff just makes the setup that much better, even if you kind of forget that or don't realize that in the setup, like as that's happening. Um, but yeah, like the payoff in this episode, I think is so great. This one does
That's true.
tackle like a couple of big themes that the show gets to a lot. Like one of the big ones being like how treating the environment like has its impact and how you
Nature.
should be, yeah, like conscious of that and understanding of
Is
that with
this
Sokka.
is this the episode that won them the Peabody Award? There's a
No, is
certain
it?
episode. I actually, do you know, or is it just
I
the
think
overall show one?
I think it's the one when Katara is the painted lady, probably, if I had to guess, but I'm not sure
Oh, that
because
or
of
the
all the,
panda spirit.
yeah. Um,
We'll look that up and come back to you with that information.
but it's just one of those things where like the show gets into it a lot, and like it's another way of being like, hey, like, and it doesn't beat you over the head with it, but it is like, hey, you should kind of be conscious of this, and like by being reckless or having just a disregard, like there are going to be consequences for it. And in this case,
Mhm.
like the consequences end up being something that is able to be resolved from acknowledgement of the situation and like stopping doing that kind of, which is good, but it's still interesting that it just brings it up in the first place, which I think is really good.
Mm. It like
um
leans back into their like Buddhist Taoism roots that the show is based on, and to like
yes.
even like the guy's enlightenment. That is
Oh,
how
that's true.
that is
I
like
was
the
gonna,
story. Is that we gonna bring
yeah,
that
it's
up? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I'm glad that you mentioned that because that's literally
Yeah.
like the whole Buddha's enlightenment happens underneath the tree. Like he sits underneath the tree and reaches
Mhm.
enlightenment, and like that's literally what this dude says that he does. And so yeah, it's like directly getting into those roots and taking that inspiration into those roots. um,
Run!
um,
Gotta go.
but like it's good. It's such good stuff, and it is really like thematically powerful, I think. And it's
Mhm.
cool that they're able to like continuously explore that. And yeah, like getting into the environment thing on the one, like respecting it, but then also as he expands upon it more and is like, yeah, this entire swamp is just like one organism working together. Um, and how I like the idea of like a location being a living thing, like a living
Yeah.
organism, as opposed to just a place. I think is a really interesting idea to like in general. That's really the vibe that like the episode is writing with
Mm.
for the first half. Like before you start getting like explanation on it, kind of, and they do still keep that kind of like mysticism around it because he is like, oh, it's a living organism, but like by having him be the monster and also able to explain stuff, it demystifies it a little bit, but then they still
Mm.
leave it open because he's like, I didn't make the tornado, like that, you know,
Yeah.
like, and he does say explicitly that the swamp is like, I think he says mystical, either mystical or spiritual or something like
Yes.
place.
Yeah.
And so like they do
It
still
has like a mind of
emphasize,
its own, kind of.
yeah, that
Because
like
even
that
you
is a
see at the
thing.
end, they leave you with that little bit that that bird screeches and a root hits it,
Hits it, yeah. So
and
like
you're like,
it
oh.
is a character and a place, and it's a living thing as opposed to just a place. And so I do like that. I think that that's a really cool idea. Um, but then also it like gets really hippie with it and it expands it, and it's like, well, everything is
Yippee.
just like I mean, yeah, as a living organism, it's like it's all connected, man. It's all just one thing. And like I don't know, I think it's kind of cliche to talk about, or it has become cliche, I think, whenever people bring it up. But I do think it's an interesting idea of like what actually does make anything separate, like everyone is just made of the same like atoms bouncing around.
Atoms
Like
and
it's
stardust
just like
and
there's just depending on how you want to look at it, like we are able to break things up into like categories and stuff because we're like, oh well, that's clearly a tree, and like I'm clearly a person. But like
mhm.
when you get down to it, it's all the same stuff. And so I think that like it's a really big idea to put in a kids show and
Mm.
like talk about. But
It
I
really
think it
is. It's like existentialism for beginners.
right,
That's
they're just like, hey,
what I feel like it gave me. I was like,
we're gonna
mhm.
we're gonna drop this in there real quick. And I think it works on a lot of levels. Like it works on the literal, like, hey, what is the actual like material difference between things, and like, is there one? But then also on the like cultural and social level of like being aware that everyone is living in the same world, and like what you do is going to have an impact on the world around you, and like how that applies to everyone. And then it's just like one thing, you know. And he even says Hugh, which it's so funny that his name is
I
Hugh,
love his name is Hugh.
the swamp protector. um but like he even says that we're all, I don't remember the exact phrasing, but like we're all part of the same world, like no matter how much some people will want to think that they're not, sort of, I don't remember
Mm,
exactly, but like that's essentially like the point. um
yeah.
and yeah, like that is an important thing to think about, the fact that, it's not just you isolated in a bubble. Like you're gonna have ripple effect and, consequences from that. And I love that the show like dives into that.
And two, it's a big theme that comes in handy later because that's a big reason why the Fire Nation is doing what they're doing. They're the people that don't think they're a part of this world and can just run right over it, and that it's
Yeah.
all just their tool and not their livelihood, I guess, or their DNA. And
Yeah, I mean, it's a again getting into like it's so strong because they're able to like always wrap it back into the environment, but like
oh,
it's
yes,
that like disregard of like, well, no, you're still like you can't just destroy everything. You're a part of everything. Like, come on, dude, you got to be like more aware of what you're doing to this,
yeah.
because it's going to impact you as well. And just the idea that people will have a disregard for it, and it's like, well, we should probably do something about that. Like, you got to be a little bit better, actually. Um, yeah, it's good that they like get into that. And then also bro
They
just
really
casually
lean into
drops that
nature.
like time and death are illusions. Like, all right, man, that's like
That
which
line, I wrote that down. I was like, oh, okay.
which like I
It's
love
like,
because I also am very like time is 100% not real. It's completely a human like construct and idea. And like
yeah, the exact way he
I,
says it, he's like, time is an illusion and so is
mhm,
death.
yes, which also
I was
like
watching this after school on a Tuesday at like 10 years old.
mhm.
Oh
It's
my
again just
God.
some real existential dread that you can drum up there. No,
Like, my
but
God.
it's a cool thing. And like I especially like geek out about that because like I literally will read a lot about time and like time's not real, and how like what that means, and like how you think about that. And it's so impossible for us to not think in linear terms because that's what we experience. But I'm like, no, 100% though. Like the future is
Yeah.
already, it's happening right now, honestly, but it's fine.
But it's fine. That's so scary.
Yeah, he like just the fact that he casually drops that though in the midst of his like ramble about everything else is great. But they're able to one just introduce these like huge ideas and be like, oh, by the way, these things aren't real and are just illusions.
You're like,
But
huh.
they like wrap that into the story because Aang is like, well, who did I see in my vision?
Mhm.
And he's like, well, think if time and death like are illusions or whatever. He's like, oh, it was
Oh,
from the
someone I
future.
will meet. Yeah.
Yeah, and so
That
like,
is
which
so cool.
spoiler alert, it's Toph, which is awesome. Can't wait to like
Spoiler alert.
get
I
there.
do love that. And I like that he says it too with a smile and like it's something that's comforting instead of something that's scary. Cause like
Hmm.
as an adult, I feel like an adult, sorry. Um, that scared me.
I
Like that's something that's terrifying and something you grapple with. And to introduce that to kids is something that's like, no, this is a comfort and this is something that actually is beautiful about this world. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh,
I also
it's
do
beautiful.
love that it like low key makes Avatar a deterministic universe, which like if we're gonna get meta about it, obviously because it's a written show, so like the things are
Alex's
planned out.
philosophy corner. Here we go.
But like no, but it does like make it like he's like, oh, it's from the future, it's a thing that will happen. Like I'm going to meet her, and it's like, oh well, that's determinism. Like if it's a thing that's like set that's going to happen, that's like how that works. Which like I'm a determinist anyway. I don't for me it makes the most sense. I don't think that's a like depressing thing though. I feel like a lot of people hear that and they're like, well, that's sad, that sucks, that means I like don't have free will. And it's like, no, you do as far as it like matters, because you can still like you feel like you have free will, and that's enough.
Mm.
Which like that's the thing, like because people will like hear about determinism and you're like, oh, so you mean that you like don't have any control over your actions? And like, I mean, yes, but you
Yeah,
don't you
but
don't feel that is the thing. It's like there's no way to like act as if you believe that the world is like deterministic, because like what does that even like? There's no, I don't even know how to like begin to
mm,
describe that, because like I feel like I can move, like if I think, oh, I want to move this pencil up, like I can do that. And like I feel like I had the like the
autonomy to
what's the
do
word?
that.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Like I
Mhm.
feel like I made that conscious decision, and like that's what matters. Like you, that's your experience, and you feel that, and so like
So that
yeah,
reminds
you
me of
can.
the meme where it's like so-called free thinkers.
So the one where
So-called
it's the
so-called
doctor
free
in the knee
thinkers when the
tap.
electric slide comes on.
Yeah, my favorite is the like where it just has the picture of like the doctor, you know, you're tapping your knee for the reflexes, and it's like so-called free thinkers when they visit the doctor's office.
Has nothing to do with Avatar, just like
Oh,
so-called free thinkers.
it's so good though. But yeah, I just like for me personally, because I am very into that philosophy stuff, like Avatar being like, oh, we're deterministic is really funny to me to just like casually drop that in there. But again, like meta, like yeah, it's a written show. They scripted this, so like duh.
Yeah, well,
Uh,
duh, yeah. It's
but
a
no,
show.
it's cool. Again, just the fact that the show has things like that in there that you can pick apart and like pick up on and kind of decipher and get
Mhm.
into. It's just wild for a, what I assume this did this air on Saturday mornings. I don't know. I didn't watch it
I
when it
don't even
aired.
know. But it was 2008. That's all I no, 2005? I think
5 to 8, I believe.
5 to
Yeah.
8, which is amazing. And that we're still
Yeah.
talking about it today and we can dive into it with even
Hmm.
how simple it is.
Oh,
We could
one
talk about this forever, but
one more thing before we jump into future casting and bigger narrative stuff that I did want to bring up. It does like briefly touch on the idea of like the disparity between like the royal and wealthy and like the common
Oh,
people,
yes.
with just like how much Zuko's pissed off about that. And it's like, this is awful, actually. Like, I hate this. Like, and just, I don't know. It's again one of the things that it doesn't like talk about really, or like be like, hey,
Mhm.
viewer, this is, you know, look at the difference
Yeah, they
between
don't
worth.
they touch on the subject, though, by showing the characters' feelings
Mhm.
on it,
Yeah, it's
and I
again
do
just
love that.
it's the classic show don't tell, and they do it fantastically every time. But yeah, I just think it's cool that they bring that up, that like Zuko is now in that position. He's like not a prince who has an entire like fleet of people that he can just boss
At
around.
his service, he's on the
Yeah,
street begging for money.
yeah. So
Beautiful. All right,
those
well,
are
when we
those are
come
my things.
those are your things. Well, when we
Yeah.
come back, we are going to dive more into the episode. Don't worry, guys. And how it contributes to the overall narrative of the series. So we will be right back.
Hey, Aspect listener, I'm Robbie.
And I'm Alex, enjoying the show here on the Aspect Network.
Then check out Framing the Force.
We are your one-stop shop for all things in a galaxy far, far away. Each week, we discuss everything from the latest news and releases to the hottest topics in the fandom.
Beyond the films and series, we share our thoughts on every corner of the Star Wars universe, from comics to video games to collectibles and everything in between.
Join us every week as we discuss one of the greatest franchises in film history here on the Aspect Network.
Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Bending the Narrative. Before the break, we broke down the episode The Swamp, and now we're going to be discussing how this episode contributes to the overall series and story in the world of Avatar. Kate, let's start with you. How does this episode contribute to the overall narrative in the world of Avatar?
Well, I feel like we already touched on it a little bit. We get the overall theme and connections back to Buddhism and Taoism, but we do get good little seeds and little reminders of what's happened before, such as Sokka with Yue and
Mm-hmm.
Katara with her mother, which I really love because those are things like the Yue thing is something that happened last season, and I like that we touch on that again. And that Sokka, he says a line, I forget what he says, but he says something like, "Yeah, that hurt me a lot. I think about her all the time." I'm
Right,
like,
yeah,
oh, like it wasn't just
he's
something for the plot; it actually
mhm.
affected his character.
Yeah, it's
I love
whenever he's
that.
talking to Katara about, or he's talking to just both her and Aang because they're discussing the visions and stuff. And he's like, I saw someone who, yeah, I think about all the time, and like that hurt me a lot. Like you saw our mother, of course she like that has a huge impact on you, and like you're gonna see her a lot, and that's when Aang is like, well, what about me?
It's like, I don't know this girl. I saw a pig that flies. Like,
Yeah, but no, that is a really cool thing that they are. Again, it's like that we said last week, where they're bringing up and reminding us about the things that we saw or things that we've like been through or the characters have been through, and like giving those the weight and the attention that they deserve. Is like, oh yeah, it's not something that just happened in this episode and like we'll never talk about it again. Like that was a big character moment and a big event in the series, and Sokka's like, yeah, I constantly have to deal with that. Like, of course that's on my mind.
and I wonder if, sorry, I was just thinking about this. I'm like, is the Force showing them something that will like help them later on? Because I know those things do come back. Like for Aang, that's or something. You know, that's Toph, his trainer that he's looking for. Sokka.
Do we see?
Like, you know what I'm thinking? I'm like, what is it? Like, what do those things all have in common? Because I feel like Sokka and Katara have something in common, and then Aang just.
I think that maybe the message for, or the thing for them there would be more into like, and Sokka's doing it basically, especially with him like talking about it like this, but just like embracing feels like a strong word for it, but like embracing like the trauma that they have, and just like being like, yeah, I just have to like, it's not something that just goes away. I like deal with this, but like that's fine. Like that doesn't like, it doesn't have to, you know, like be everything. Like, yeah, it's just something that we like deal with and like continue to move on. That's what Sokka's like really trying to do in the episode. Is like, there's nothing weird going on here. Like it's just, you know, this
a
is
weight
life
that I carry.
Yeah. So I feel like that's it for them. And then yeah, Aang's just the outlier because he's the Avatar and he's got to have like,
because he's the Avatar. Which there is a line, and then they're like, that's just Avatar stuff.
Yeah, it was just so funny. Honestly, it's such a great like Deus Ex Machina for them for everything. It's
and I do
Avatar.
love like that the show leans into that, but they earn that. You know, they earn those things where it's like, okay, it's like, can you just go away? Or what was it in the Cave of Two Lovers? They're like, actually, we want to do this alone, and they're like, okay.
Yeah.
What am I like to get them to get the hippies away from them? I forget what it was.
I think so. Yeah.
I like that the show does lean into that a lot.
No, it
I
does.
also think. Oh yeah.
No, I was going to say that. I'm so sorry.
No, go.
I was gonna say the other thing that like Avatar like OP stuff, and we mentioned this earlier, is the fact that he uses like, he just finds them through the swamp because he's like, oh, everything's connected, and touches like the swamp branch, and like all of his tattoos glow and everything.
Yes.
And he like goes into a like, not Avatar state, but like Avatar power up thing, I guess. And like is just able to use that to like track them and find them. And I'm pretty sure we never see that again in the entire series.
I was just about to say, I was like,
I can't remember ever seeing it again, and I can't think of an app like of when. I mean, it would have been kind of useful when they were trying to find Appa, but like, you know, like, and this episode is positing that like everything is connected. That's the whole like thesis of this dude. And so I think it's hilarious that like never once
like,
again, unless I'm just
location
blanking
with Avatar
on
state.
Yeah, like unless I'm just straight up blanking on him using it again at some point, which I don't
I'm trying
think
to think
that
him on like the Turtle Island, maybe all the way at the end.
That's not the same thing though. He's not like trying to find people, is he? He's just like communing with the turtle, right?
If we get to it, we'll make a point of it. If we see it again, we will
I'll say
make
that
a
I
point
was
of
wrong,
it.
For sure. But I don't think that he ever uses that again, which I think is just so funny. Like that's just a crazy power that they introduced for 2 seconds. Like just.
But this is kind of the only time that they do that ever. Where they're like, yeah, we used this once, but that's pretty amazing that this is their one and only time that they do that.
I wonder what other like random powers the Avatar can get. Just like,
I know.
You should be able to teleport. Just kidding. Like, just walk into the spirit. Well, if there was like spirit world things everywhere, or if he could just like get into the spirit, or
kind of like
if the Avatar could just
play Minecraft, like Nether portals.
Yeah,
and then you can get you
move
somewhere
to a different
faster.
location on the like using the spirit world as teleportation. Why are this is so hot?
Get us in the writing room. Get us in the writing room.
But you know, because like, and also doesn't time. I don't remember how time
is illusion.
But I don't remember how they move relative in the spirit world and the real world. Like, is it?
Oh yeah, time is different, I think.
So like, you could, in theory, like if you could just jump into the spirit world and then move around in the spirit world and come out at a different location and like different time has passed, Avatar can teleport. Anyways, that's a super
There is
super off topic.
Side hustle here. Side hustle? No, side topic.
But yeah, I think it's hilarious that that's the only time he uses the like Avatar GPS tracker.
Yeah. And also when he does it, only his hand on the ground glows. You don't see his other hand glow. I wonder if that's either a goof or if that's on purpose.
I'm pretty sure his head tattoo does though. And his eyes. So like they probably just didn't. They probably just slipped up on that. I didn't even notice that, honestly. I did though notice in, I think it's this episode, there's a shot of Sokka running and he had his boomerang in his hand and it cuts to like
but he lost his boomerang.
And it's not in his hand for like those 2 seconds, but then the next shot, whenever I was like, oh, where'd his boomerang go? And the next shot comes up and like it's back in his hand again. I was like, oh, okay.
Okay. We had a deadline. I get
like
it.
there's probably like an inch on the paper, honestly, you know, like as they're just I'm like, oh, it's fine. Like there's a lot going on. There's a lot of action.
Doesn't ruin my enjoyment. I still love it.
The fact that we are rewatching though, and I'm like analyzing it, I do notice
finally seeing that.
Yeah. Like I never noticed that before.
Cool new things that we get in this episode though is new ways to use waterbending.
Yes,
we didn't know before. Yeah,
the water in the vines, which
that is very cool.
Actually, if you think about it, it's kind of like
bloodbending.
Yeah. Like,
wait a second.
Which also, now that I'm thinking about it, like you could just, with this logic, you could just use the water in someone's body to make them move. Also, considering that's most of what we are.
But that is bloodbending. It's using the water in the body. It's not because you're not bending the blood. It's like the water in the blood. Am I right?
I thought it was the blood. But
we'll get to that.
I guess I'm maybe just because I'm thinking about it being called bloodbending, I'm taking it too literally.
Because your body is 70% water, so.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's like the same thing, which is cool. They expand upon that later. And like, I did also think about that while I was watching the episode. I was like, how is this dude moving like, I know he's a waterbender, but what the And then I was like, oh, right. Like,
it is cool. I forgot if they were earthbenders or not, but I also love the way that they move the boats.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
Arm thing that they do.
They're like rotors, essentially.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I also love this like culture based off the Cajun Bayou from the South.
I like the differences between them and like Katara and Sokka and being like, oh, you're waterbenders too? Like we're like, I forget exactly what they say. Do they say cousins? I don't think they do.
Yeah, he's like, we're brothers.
Yeah. And she's
we're kin. We're kin.
Kin. That's what it is. Yeah.
And Katara's like,
And it's also so funny whenever they're like around the campfire and he's like, oh, you'll have a lot of like swamps or whatever. And she's like, no, it's mostly like snow and ice. It's like, no wonder you left.
It's so good.
So funny.
And I did read too that they are descendants of Water Tribe members, but like hundreds of years ago, they were moving and they settled in the swamps. And
which is super. Again, it's the show. It's just expanding the world and making it a more lived in and like, and also in a very believable way. And they're like, oh, this is what peoples and cultures do. Like that is how a world gets populated, and like that you do get different differences in culture, even within the same larger like they're all waterbenders, but like, you have these different depending on where they are. Like there's going to be differences in norms and things like that, which is awesome to see. And it's just the show like does that with all of them, and it's great whenever we get to see more of them explored. I also, not directly related to them, but to Katara, her parting the swamp water is such a sick visual whenever they're fighting the swamp monster. It's so
Moses.
Cool. Yeah, it's sick. Honestly, like granted it's like 3 feet of water, but like it's still really cool.
Like she's awesome. Yeah. The way they fight it's
the obvious
together.
Visual, like yeah.
Also, I feel like that stuff always tasted. This is such a weird thing, but when I was a kid watching this episode, my mom would make like spinach. I was like, this is what that would taste like. I think I always thought, I don't know, is that a weird thing? I always thought they look so.
They do look spinach-like.
They look spinach-like.
Yeah. They kind of do. Her throwing the like water disc blades is also just awesome.
The water disc blades, love those.
Like, throwing those, and that's when you first see that there's a guy in there and kind of like getting into that. The organic mech suit thing, which is awesome.
I love that, and I think that's so cool because I feel like that's from their anime inspiration. And like
Mhm.
such a big thing in anime is like Gundam and mecha suits. And I like that this is their own little version of that. Of
Mhm.
like, they're like, let's lean into that a little
Yeah,
Evangelion action there.
it's a way to like bring that vibe in there while still maintaining the consistency of the Avatar
And like
world.
authenticity of their show. Yeah.
Yeah, as opposed to like being like, oh, we have mechs now, which they will get eventually.
We'll
but
get
like
there.
but like for the time and kind of like the culture that they've established in this, like it's an organic one, which is cool. It makes sense. It's also just a sick design. Like I like the mask thing.
It is, yes. And I
It's
like
cool.
wonder what that mask is. Because it's when
Like
they cut the mask, that's when they get him, right?
yeah, I mean, whenever she like fully slices the mask is when
Mm-hmm.
he starts like coming out. Um, but yeah, that fight is
But
just
very cool
awesome.
stuff. Love the spirits. Love, or not the spirits, the swamp people.
Hmm. Yes,
And now I'm thinking
yeah,
about,
which is like that's they don't get a name beyond that, right? Like they are just the swamp people, I think.
I think they're just the swamp. Yeah, I think they have a name. But I didn't write it down. I think it's just the swamp people. I
Well, they're
also
the
love that
swamp
he's like,
people.
that's a limu.
Oh, yes,
He
good
looks
stuff.
at Momo and calls him a limu.
Oh, the gator
Oh,
catfish also is wild. More
old
animal
Slim.
combination. Yes, Slim.
Old Slim.
He's like basically like family, which is
That's
hilarious.
so cute. I love Slim. He's named after actually one of the writer's dogs.
Oh, that's cool. I like that they do that all the time.
Yeah, that they put in their little like writing team. Like some characters are based off of an animator. That's like somebody's named after somebody. I think that's the
Hmm.
cutest thing.
No,
Um,
it's awesome.
I also love now.
Again,
This is back to I feel like we have talked about Zuko and Iroh,
yeah.
and I
So
love we get some blue spirit action.
yeah, which will be a big thing going forward a lot in this season, which is cool. I like that they like bring that back again. This season just doing a good job of being like, hey, these things we established them for a reason. They're going to be useful, and
Yeah,
really
we're
showing
not
that.
gonna just let them go. We're not gonna leave them to trash and just do new things.
Hmm.
I like it because there's also something I never noticed is in the beginning, like cart passes by, a guy pulling a cart.
Hmm.
Zuko's mask is on the blue spirit mask is on that cart.
I did not notice that.
No, I didn't either. I read it somewhere and I looked back and I was like, oh my god,
That's
because I
great.
like somebody pointed out that they were like, oh, his old mask probably got destroyed or ruined in his last fight, so he probably bought a
Hmm.
new one, and it's probably
I like
that
the
one.
I like the idea that it's just a super common mask, which I mean, I guess makes sense.
Yeah,
But like that he's just like, oh, I gotta grab a new one, and he sees it. I I just thought about it, like the idea of the mask talking to him, like the Green Goblin helmet.
the Green Goblin helmet.
It's the cart passes by and it's just whispering to him, and he's
It's like you want to steal things, you want to kill that guy. He
yeah.
was
Which
looking at you funny.
I mean, I respect to Zuko for teaching this dude a lesson. I don't know if murder was necessarily the right thing, which again, they don't show him straight up murdering this dude, but
It's okay.
I feel like it might be implied.
I think it was pretty implied too,
Like we
because
never
the
see that guy
broadswords.
again, I
Oh,
don't think.
and also he comes at him with the broadswords at first, which are also the blue spirit's weapon of choice, and that's
Yes.
what. So I wonder if I don't know if he had the idea or if he got the idea from that guy. He was like, I'll show you how to really use broadswords now.
It
See
was
how good
probably the
you really
combination of
are.
things. Like he saw the
Mhm.
mask and it started whispering to him, and he was like, "Oh no, I can't." And then this dude was being the worst, and he's like, "This guy," and he's like, saw the swords too, and he's
This
like, "All
guy.
right, that's it. Like I know what I'm doing later."
But I do love to, there's another, I guess, theme in this, but something that they touch on, which is like, it's deep, but the like humiliation of begging for money.
Hmm.
And like, he's like, this is humiliating.
Yeah,
It's
no, it
like,
is.
yeah,
It's
it's,
very uncomfortable to watch. Honestly, you're
mhm.
like, this is not great at all.
He
Like
makes
this
them
sucks.
dance and sing for money. Like, that's messed up.
Hmm. And yeah, the fact that they really do like put a spotlight on it for a minute, and you're like, immediately also you're like, this guy is the worst person ever. I hate him.
Yeah. And like, because I feel like as kids, you see that and you're like, wait, maybe, like as a kid, you don't think twice about it. But then you're like, oh my God, like that is
You're
hard and
like, hey, he
humiliating.
should
And
just be able to eat. Like he shouldn't have to worry about that, But
yeah.
they're just having to sit there, and this is what they're forced to do now. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, it's an important thing to put the spotlight on. I also like that there's like a lot of character stuff for Zuko and Iroh in this, and like
For how
3
little they
minutes.
are on
Yeah, and
screen,
like
yeah.
maybe 3 minutes of screen time. Like it's literally
Maybe that's pushing it.
it's the first and last scene. Like that's it.
Mhm.
The last one's probably like 40 seconds, maybe. Like so,
Like
yeah,
15 maybe.
it's a super super quick thing, but they're able to just establish and do so much and like still move them forward, um, which I think is really impressive to be able to do in that amount of time.
Yeah, and we get like a foreshadow of what kind of route Zuko's going to go on, like this
Hmm.
thieving kind of like
Yeah,
doing what
it's
he
like
can, and but the
it's
bad way.
continuously building too on like what had happened previously with him stealing the, is it an ostrich horse? Is that what they are?
Ostrich horse,
Like,
yeah.
yeah, like stealing
Oh, and
that.
they're sleeping. They're with the ostrich horse too, which I think is so
Yeah,
cute.
which is great.
Mhm.
But like it's just continuing to build on that, and it's like further steps towards this. It's like, okay, well, he did that. Now he's gonna murder this guy, and he's using the blue spirit mask
Murder this guy.
again. And we'll see that continue through in the weeks to come, just how he kind of like escalates and gets into these habits that begins to develop. Um,
Mm.
it's a cool is not the right word, but it's a well
Cool.
done.
It's
it's a
cool. Robbing is
it's a
cool, guys.
it's a well done, consistent like
Yeah,
escalation for him. And
and
then the big
I do like
thing
that.
that this episode does as far as like future casting is tough. Like we've seen,
Yeah, wait, we
you
didn't
don't
talk
know
about
it at
that
the
yet.
time if this is your first time watching through, but we have now seen Aang's earthbending teacher, who will also be a pivotal part of Team Avatar and the entire universe going forward. Shout out Metal Bending. She's the best. But yeah, like
Yeah.
there's so much that's going to happen from her introduction, and it's cool that they're doing that like already. We're what, this is 3 episodes into the season or something, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
like
we still
that's,
have what, 2 episodes to go until we see her?
I think so. That
Yeah, because we
feels
have
right.
next one is Avatar Day, and then I think it's
Yeah.
Blind Bandit.
Yeah. So I mean, like, still, and it's
Correct.
again, that's like establishing and like planting these seeds early, and like going through and doing that. It's
And I think
great.
too, going back on that thing where I was talking about, oh, I've seen this episode so many times, and it's kind of hard to watch like these kind of episodes when you're on a rewatch because you know what's coming next. You
Hmm.
know, we all know what's coming next, and we're so excited for it. And
Yeah.
so I think it's sad that on a rewatch, I kind of want to. I'm like, oh, I want to get to the good part. I want to get to the good part.
Hmm.
I'm like, Avatar is about patience. Avatar is about waiting.
It's
I'm going
about
to
the
be
journey,
patient.
not the
Not the
destination.
journey, not the
Come on, Kate.
destination. That's what the hippies told us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's no, it's true. But it's also, I like that they're able to show her and like make it not obvious that that's the earthbending teacher that he's going to find, especially because of her costume, like her outfit
Mm,
changed. Like as we know Toph, she doesn't look like that, right?
no,
Because this is just
no.
her as the like rich girl like daughter, and like
Hmm.
that vibe, and that's just not who she's going to be at all through the rest of the series. So like they're able to do that, and it's a really like, you're like, who the hell is this? Like you don't
Who
get
is it?
earthbending tutor vibes whenever you see her running away, right, in the vision
God,
thing.
no.
Which I think is another cool like sly thing that they're able to do there. Um, and yeah,
Yeah, it sneaks up on you.
just establishing again like this. She's such a pivotal part of the show, which is also why it's wild. And I think that we talked about this last season, that she isn't in book 1 at all. Like it's so weird to think about. Like it makes sense because of the way that all the plotting and stuff goes, but like having seen the whole series, and when you think about it in retrospect, like Team
Like, that's
Avatar
the main character.
is the 4 of them, right? Like she's a main character, right? But
Yeah.
she's not there for an entire season.
And she still carries the show.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That bitch.
She's not there for an entire season and a couple episodes of the second season. Like what? It's
Like, what?
it's wild, honestly. But yeah,
Like,
it's
that
cool.
is, like, talk about great writing. Talk about
Yeah.
how to write a character.
Hmm.
Like,
She just
and how
has
to
like,
implement one too naturally. Like, I like that they're like, no, we can't just push her in. Like, we got to plant the seeds early. We got to let her grow into the show. Like, they
mhm.
ease her into it as well. They don't just, like, I like, they show her the hint here. They have it's told multiple times to Aang, you need to find an earthbending teacher that will wait and listen. They drop the hints early on, and I
Mhm.
I like that they're not just like, oh, by the way, they meet this girl and she's their airbending teacher.
Yeah, it's very much like as much as we'll sometimes joke about things happening for plot convenience, and that's mostly to do with like Avatar related stuff because
Yeah.
he's the Avatar. As much as the show does do that, it also more than that does things where like they've properly established things and planted seeds and like built things up in a way that it feels super organic and natural when the solution does present itself, or we do get to whatever payoff for the things that they're doing earlier on. Like it does a good job of doing that, as opposed
There's
to
no
just like,
lazy writing. Yeah.
yeah, as opposed to just like, oh well, like here's a problem and here's the solution instantly, and like it came out of nowhere. There was nothing to like allude to this or anything related to it or whatever. It doesn't just come out of nowhere, unless it's Aang needed to use Avatar
Unless
GTS
Aang needs to
to
use
find
something
people,
special.
or like needs someone to come represent themselves in court. But we'll talk about that next week.
We'll talk about that
Um,
next week.
but yeah, like it doesn't more than it, and that's why I think the cop outs and like those kinds of narrative leaps or like just
Like,
being
I
able to
feel like
like
they're earned.
they're earned. Yeah, they're earned. That's why
You can easily overlook them.
yeah, because of all the other work that they do with everything else, is really what makes that work and gives it that balance, which is again a big theme of the show, able to bring it back around. But yeah,
But yeah, any last minute
I
plugs?
don't, I don't think so. Toph is great. Can't wait to
Cannot
get
wait.
more into that.
Yes,
Yeah,
but we got 2 weeks.
I know. It's
We're not there
okay.
yet.
Next week is one of my favorites.
Hold your ostrich horses, everybody. Hold those ostrich horses.
Yeah, keep them at the ready though.
Keep them at the ready. We're almost there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in to Bending the Narrative this week. Next week, we celebrate Avatar Day. But first, Alex, where can people find you online?
You can find me online at the Alex Batts. It's BATTS on both Twitter and Instagram.
Awesome. You could find me online at Kate the Official on Instagram. And please be sure to, oh, wait, that's your line, Alex. You go say that.
That's okay.
Thanks for
starting though. Thank you. And please be sure to subscribe here to The Aspect on YouTube and any platform where podcasts can be found. Please be sure to give us a like, leave a comment, turn on that notification bell. You can also follow us on Twitter /X, Instagram, and TikTok at The Aspect Co. A big thank you to Peter Fraser for providing our series music. And again, thank you for listening.
And Flamio Hotman.
Hey, thank you for tuning in.
If you enjoyed this show, then be sure to subscribe here to The Aspect so you never miss an episode.
And be sure to check out some of our other shows and videos on the Aspect Network.
Thank you so much for listening, and Flamio Hotman.